Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I've been so excited, and I'm putting faces with names now. This is great.
Exactly. We love doing our little name game at the beginning because it gives us an opportunity we don't see each other all the time, so it gives a chance to catch up.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Kristy, to get us started, do you mind telling our readers a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing?
Sure. Well, I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey, and I have 9 novels out, including my newest, The Wedding Veil, which just released on March 29th. And it was my first historical contemporary novel, which was really fun for me to write. I am a Tar Heel. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill's journalism school and have a master's in literature. And I live on the coast of North Carolina with my husband and my son and our new puppy Salt. He's not really that new anymore. He's like 5 months old, but which is actually, now he's big and a wild puppy.
He's doing that growing where every day he's like doubling in size.
It's like bigger. And anyway, he's really fun. I don't know what else about me. I'm excited to be here. I'm reading Emily Giffen's Meant to Be. If you want to know what I'm reading and watching and listening to.
I absolutely do. We can jump right into that.
I'm finally watching Ted Lasso, which I absolutely adore. It's so cute. And this will make y'all laugh. I'm actually listening to my own Peachtree Bluff series.
Interesting. How do you feel about listening to your own words?
It's a lot better than reading them.
Okay.
I like to listen because I feel like it's kind of a different experience, like you're not, but when I read, I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said that. Although it's funny because I noticed things that must have gotten changed the very, very last round of edits that I never saw again. And I'll be like, no, that's not what that was supposed to mean. Or just like funny things like, in The Southern Side of Paradise, they say one another a lot. And I don't know, I was thinking today, I was like going through this in my mind. I don't know if this is just like my family or if it's like North Carolina or if it's the South, but I feel like we say each other, instead of one another. And I'm like, every time I heard it, I was like, I definitely didn't write that. So that's really funny, but that's like so small and nitpicky. But yeah, it's really fun. I'm just working on some Peachtree stuff. So I was like trying to make sure I had like all the little details and loose ends because, I wrote it in 2017, 18, and 19. So it was a little while ago.
Yeah,
or they came out then. So I wrote them in 16, 17, and 18. So
wow. Yeah. It was like, at that point, you're probably just revisiting old friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a long time ago. So I was like really trying to get all the details back together and all of that. So yeah.
Do you get to have any input in like picking your narrator?
Yes, I absolutely do. They usually send me like options for things. So they'll say like, this is who we're thinking for this character and this is who we're thinking for this character. And so that's kind of fun because I'll get to go in and, listen and sort of like, who do I think for this and who do I think for that? And, they always say we might not be able to get them, but I don't think that's ever been the case before. But yeah, and sometimes I'll say like, oh my gosh, I love this narrator, but I really hear it for that character or something like that. And they're usually pretty good about that, but I used to not. So it's really just the last couple of books.
That's so cool. So let's go back in time a little bit to your discovery of like your love of reading. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about, the first books that you fell in love with?
Yeah. So I've always loved to read, and my mom loves to tell this story about me being like 2 years old.
Oh, cool. I love
supposed to be like wiggly and a toddler and like running around everywhere. And that, I would sit with her for hours and just be like, one more story. So it definitely began really early for me. But I mean, I remember this is so funny. Like one of my most distinct memories is being, I don't know if I was in pre-K or kindergarten or like, one of those times. I guess I was probably in kindergarten. So I was maybe around 5. And I remember laying in my bed in my room and I had this book called Dr. Cat that actually a reader sent to me, y'all. I told this story and I was like, I read this book called Dr. Cat and I can't find it. And a reader found it and sent it to me.
No way. That's so cool.
Yeah. But I remember like sitting in my bed and reading it by myself. Like, and it wasn't a book I had memorized. It wasn't like, I really read the whole thing. And it was like the greatest, most exciting moment ever. That's so funny. I don't talk about that a lot. That's really funny, but I do remember that so well. And then I remember like standouts for me as a kid, Matilda was a favorite. Like I remember reading Matilda like 11 times in one year or something.
Wow.
Obviously
You were Matilda in that
yeah,
moment.
I was Matilda. Yeah. I read all the Roald Dahl books like many, many times, including his somewhat creepy memoirs or autobiographies. I don't know what he calls them, but he had a really disturbing childhood. And I look back now, I was reading one to my son. He's 10, he can read it himself, but we still like to read books together. And there's one, I was like, this is just so disturbing. Like, I don't know if I don't remember it. It's funny when you're a kid. But I loved Roald Dahl, and then I still love Roald Dahl. And then A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is my favorite. So there are probably a lot of people on here that have heard me say this, but that's my favorite book ever. And I read it for the first time in 4th grade, and I read it every year. So
I love that. So when you went back, when the reader sent you Dr. Cat, did you have a chance to reread it?
Yeah. Oh, it's like super, it's one of those little like early reader situations. So anyway, it was just.
I love it. It's so funny. All right, well, let's dive a little bit into The Wedding Veil, which is this beautiful, sweeping novel that takes place over multiple generations, or has multiple generations in it. And each of them are associated with the Biltmore Mansion. What drew you to writing about this iconic home?
So this was a story that came to me in like little bits and pieces over a couple of years, but I've never written historical fiction before. So it wasn't something immediately on my radar, but I had been to Biltmore many times and, had always really thought it was cool, but just had never given that much thought to it, I guess. And we went for a visit in 2018. We were evacuating for a hurricane, and we took our son there for the first time and just kind of like made a little trip out of it to Asheville. And when I got there that day, I just remember thinking so much about Edith Vanderbilt and realizing how young she was when her husband, George, who built Biltmore, died, and that, she had so much to keep up with. And then later sort of learned that the majority of what was left of his fortune was left to his daughter, Cornelia. And she didn't receive it until she was 25, and he died when she was 13. And I just thought, how did Edith manage, to keep up this grand, massive estate and all the land around it? And then, of course, basically the entire town of Asheville, because at that point they really owned most of Asheville. And I was just really struck by that and started reading about her. And I kept thinking, someone has written a novel about her, I'm sure, because I wasn't really finding a lot of the answers to the questions I had. And so I looked up and I couldn't find a book about her. I asked a couple of bookseller friends, and they were like, well, we know about Alva Vanderbilt. And I was like, oh yeah, I've read that book and I love it. And all that, but they didn't really know of anything about Edith. And so I just kind of like just swept it under the rug and thought, well, that's a shame. Someone should write a book about her. And so about 18 months later, I was at my cousin's wedding, and she was wearing my wedding veil, which my sister-in-law had given to me, and it had been passed through like many generations in my husband's family. And so I was putting this veil on her head as she was like getting ready. We're getting ready to walk out of the bridal suite, and it was just the two of us. And it was just this really kind of like magical moment. And I remember saying to her something like, isn't it cool that this veil connects us to all of these women that we'll never know? And she was like, that is cool. And then we were both kind of like, that's a book.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I immediately knew like, oh, that's a story that I want to write. And so I kind of did a little digging just to see if, there was something called The Wedding Veil. And I was surprised there, maybe it was something a long time ago or something, but there hadn't been a lot called The Wedding Veil. And I thought, I want it to be called The Wedding Veil. And I pitched the idea to my agent. She's kind of like the first line when I have a book idea. And I just said, what do you think? I want to write about this historical a family wedding veil that has been passed through generations of women, and how it connects them, and it becomes a symbol of happy marriage. And, but then, how it doesn't, kind of like that, like it doesn't kind of thing. And she was like, I love that idea. It's perfect. It's a great idea for you. And she said, but what if you write about a real wedding veil, like a historical wedding veil? And I remember just thinking, there's no way. Like, how am I going to find a wedding veil that's worn by a woman that I am so interested in that I want to spend the next year of my life researching her? That's just not going to happen. But so for some reason, like I just, it put a little bug in my ear. And there were a couple of women that I knew I wanted to write about, but that I wanted to dedicate sort of like an entire book to. And I thought about Edith Vanderbilt. I was like, that's someone that I'm interested in, but I knew just from the cursory research I had done on her, there wasn't that much about her. So she wasn't someone that I really could see writing an entire novel about, but I thought, well, if I wrote a historical contemporary novel, maybe. but what are the chances that she has an interesting wedding veil? So I Googled Edith Vanderbilt wedding veil, and a story popped up about this beautiful heirloom veil that was worn by Edith's, it was made of Edith's grandmother's lace, and it was worn by her mother and her 3 sisters, and Edith wore it and her daughter Cornelia wore it, and then it disappeared and no one knows what happened to it. And I was like, okay, well, that's my story. I mean, it was like just dropped from the heavens. Like I can tell the story of these 2 remarkable women, and have this wedding veil like at the center of the story, and then have my contemporary grandmother and granddaughter and kind of solve the mystery of what happened to the Vanderbilt veil and all of those things. So it was great. It was just one of those kind of moments where I was like, okay, this is it. And I started writing it that very day.
I love it. And, to make that transition, it is still hybrid in the sense that it is contemporary and historical, but to be able to start making that transition into historical is like, gotta be so just refilling of your creative tank.
That's such a good way to put it. And I do think, I love writing contemporary fiction. I mean, I absolutely love it. So there is nothing about me that ever wants to completely move away from that. But I also did feel like it was a new challenge for me. It was something a little bit different. And I give my publisher a lot of credit because they easily could have said, no, this is too out of the box for you. We've spent 8 books building this, little area for you to fit inside of, and now you're going to go outside of it. But and it was funny because I was actually very prepared to be like, no, this is very similar to my stories. It's still families, it's mothers and daughters and grandmothers and grandchildren and, tradition in the South and legacy and all these things that I tend to write about and secrets and, all of that. And they didn't bat an eye. They were like, oh yeah, sounds great. Go for it. And I was like,
love it.
No.
Can't wait to see it.
Like, but I have all these reasons. And they were like, no, it sounds great. Go for it. You don't need any reasons. We know why you want to write it. It sounds great. I was like, okay.
Love it. You're like, I'm ready to fight for it. And they're like, no need. It's fine.
Yeah, they're like, no, we're on the same team. It's great. I was like, okay.
I love it so much. Well, with all the women that are shown there in different crossroads in their lives, marriage, motherhood, career decisions, and so much else is going on. But even though they were all different, what were some of the through lines that you noticed with creating their stories?
It's funny that sometimes when I'm writing these stories, I don't actually notice the through lines until I'm finished. And obviously writing these 2 real women, I was writing about real things in their lives. I mean, there are obviously the story in some ways is fictional, but I did base it as much on fact as I possibly could. So if you were in a major moment in their life, it might not have happened exactly that way because maybe I couldn't find exactly how it happened, although sometimes I could. But it was as close to the facts as it possibly could be. But so I realized afterwards that really running through this story is the idea of 2 things. One, each of these women has to make some big decisions throughout the course of this story. And what they ultimately boil down to is, am I going to make myself happy or am I going to make everybody else happy or someone else happy? Whatever it may be. Am I doing this for me or am I doing this for everyone else? And they make different decisions for different reasons. This is not a story where it's like, I'm going to do exactly what I want to, because that's not real. I mean, we all make decisions because of other people and for other people. And I think that's, a part of life. And that was interesting to explore. And then I also realized at the very end of this story, each of these women comes to a crossroads in her life where she has to let go of something in a very sort of metaphysical sense in order to move forward. But this veil becomes this symbol of what it is that each of these women has to let go of in order to move forward. And so those were both things that I didn't really necessarily set out to do, but they ended up kind of happening. And I love that, there are these parallels in their lives. And I think it just, speaks to the fact that whether, it's 1914 or 2022, we're still doing the same things. We're still fighting the same battles. We're still thinking the same thoughts. And it might look a little different, so can be good or bad, depending on how you think about it. But I just thought it was interesting that these women had these really common experiences despite their differences in age and life station and even, generation.
Absolutely. And it's such a testament too for the readers because they're going to be all coming in at their own life stage as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you mentioned the Peachtree Bluff series, you're living in it right now because you're re-listening to it. And it's also getting turned into a TV series. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's going and how, how it all came together?
Yes. So this was one of those things that like just shows you, I mean, we can work as hard as we want to, and we can do all these things, but there's so much fate at work, in our work. I actually did not know this until recently. And so I think this is so interesting, but, the producer who ended up optioning the Peachtree Bluff series originally, just told me recently her husband adapts, books for like Hallmark and Lifetime and things like that. And he actually read the Peachtree Bluff series, and he gave it to her and said, I think you'll really like this. He's like, I loved it, but it's a little bit too edgy for, which is hilarious because my books are not edgy, but there's this sort of secret at the center of the story that's like, it's not a Hallmark movie, and so he sent them to her, and she read them, and she called me and said, I love these books. I'm really interested in them, and I want to come to Beaufort and talk to you about it. And as it turned out, she grew up like 30 minutes up the road from me, which was hilarious. And so there was just that really great connection. And I love that, she is a native Southerner, because I think there are a lot of nuances that sometimes can get lost in a development like that. So that has been kind of interesting to work with her on that. But we ended up, it was a very long process because of COVID. We thought this was going to be like, the writer will write the pitch and I'll fly out to LA and we'll sit in a room and we'll pitch to every network and it'll be done in like a week. Well, of course that wasn't how it happened, because we were all sitting in front of our computers. So it took like months and months and months and months and months to pitch all of the different networks. But it did end up getting bought by NBC, which is really exciting. And I was able to write the pilot with the writer and the showrunner. They actually both work for Sweet Magnolias, which was really fun to kind of get to like, although they would not tell me any like inside juicy secrets. I know they wouldn't give me any spoilers. It's so mean. But they were really great to work with. And so we've written the pilot, and we're just kind of waiting. January and February were like a really big turning point because a lot of shows got, I don't even know what the proper term would be, but I guess sort of like out of development, sort of let go, I guess. And we're still in development. So that's really exciting news for us. And, we still have some steps, we still have a ways to go, but I have never gotten a project even remotely this close before. And so it's just been I've learned a lot. It's been really exciting to see, but I've also learned how crazy it is that you can, how much time and money and resources like these can be invested in these shows, and then they don't even make it to air. So, we hope they'll make it to air. So everybody cross your fingers and toes. So I'm hoping that there's more Peachtree to come. But yeah, it's exciting. It's been a fun process.
That's really exciting. Do you know when you'll hear about a season?
So I don't know yet, but I'm hoping like soon. Yeah. So we'll see, like any day. So we're sort of just
all right. We're sending Kristy good vibes for the fall.
Good Peachtree vibes. I know. I'm almost like, maybe I should like send something out and be like, hey guys, somebody said something about the other day. They're like, you should get your readers to make videos and send them into you of like, this is why I want to see Peachtree Bluff on TV. And they're like, I think it's really effective.
It could be just a little grassroots marketing. It's fine.
A little grassroots. I mean, it works. It works.
Exactly. A little word of mouth. It saves shows. Why not make, help get them developed or get them actually on air?
Exactly. Well, and I mean, it does work. Like, it just goes to show, tell people what you want, because I wrote Christmas of Peachtree Bluff because people kept asking me for more Peachtree Bluff. And finally I was like, well, dang, I mean, I want to write more Peachtree Bluff, and I guess people want to read it. So let's do it.
I love it so much. So do you think you would want to come back and do more scripts?
I mean, I never say never. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's just, I love to write novels. And so I think what I would really like to do, and what I was originally slated to do, was to work on the script on a consulting basis. So I wasn't like in every meeting, in every writing room, and every, but I would be just like sort of reviewing things, and I'd be there for questions and, that kind of thing. So that is something that I would be really interested in doing moving forward. But I probably, it's just hard to have the time too. I mean, during COVID, I guess, because I wasn't on tour and I wasn't really traveling, it was slightly easier, but trying to fit that into my life now would just be really difficult, like trying to keep on writing schedule and writing scripts and being on tour. And I don't think I can manage all of that. And novels are just my first love. I learned that. And I think that's a good thing to get to learn about yourself, is that, I love doing something different. I stretched a different muscle, but I love to write novels. So
I love that. Well, that's a perfect segue before we get into our fresh facts section. It's a perfect segue to tell our viewers and readers about what they can expect from you next.
Yay, okay. So I have a novel coming out April 25th of 2023 called The Summer of Songbirds. And it is about three best friends who meet at summer camp when they're children, and they're all in their 30s now. And one of their aunts owns the summer camp. And so in the post-COVID world, not a book about COVID. I don't even think we say the word COVID. Don't worry. But that is kind of the impetus. She has a really bad year in 2020 because she has to shut the camp down. And so she's struggling, to get back on her feet, and just decides that, she's been doing this a really long time and she just doesn't think that she can do it. And so these women come together to save the summer camp that, means so much to them for so many reasons. But also my protagonist, Daphne, is an attorney, and she finds out something about her best friend Lanier's fiance that is protected by attorney-client privilege. So she has to decide whether she's going to tell her and get disbarred, or she's going to let her walk down the aisle, knowing this thing about this man that she knows. And Lanier has done some really big things for Daphne in her life that we learn about that makes this decision sort of even more difficult, but she's also a single mother. So this is her, source of income. But Lanier also has a secret that Daphne does not know about that would change the way that she thought about everything. And so when and if she does discover the secret, it could sort of change the trajectory of the book. So there's a lot at play, and but it was a really fun book to write. And I was actually at family camp with my son and my husband and a bunch of our friends. It was during summer of 2020 because none of the kids could go to summer camp, but they were able to work it out. So families could have their own cabins and we could eat outside. Anyway, it was really fun. But it was a really old summer camp. And I was like, oh, these walls could talk, and I actually got stuck on a sailboat with two of my friends. We were like, oh, great, we're going to die here because no one knows we're gone. We have no radio. So we sat in this boat and told all of our favorite summer camp stories. And I was like, thanks guys, this is going to be really good for my book.
Yeah, exactly. Mining my friends. Thank you.
They knew it. Fortunately, they knew it. And we actually made up character names and things based on real stories. And
I love it.
Oh my gosh, if this guy ever reads this book, he's going to know this is him. I mean, it was just really funny. So, anyway, we had a good time, and it was a really fun book to write. And it was fun to go back to camp a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say we all have our weird relationships with camp, but
oh, that's true. I guess not I think everybody doesn't love summer camp. That's probably true, but you will love this one.
Exactly. I was gonna say I like a book summer camp because I don't get any ticks or anything.
I
love it.
Spray
Let's do it.
is required in the reading of this book. So
love it.
There you go.
I love it so much. Okay, so we are going to, Kristy, just transition into some fresh facts. These are just sort of fun, random questions that just to get to know you a little bit better. Okay. How important are tropes to you in your writing process?
Again, not that important. Just not something that I really think about, something that happens maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite genre to read?
Well, we're heading into summer, so I'm in a full-on beach read women's fiction moment, but I love historical fiction too. Those are definitely my two favorite genres. But yeah, I love a good rom-com too,
Yeah, awesome. I love it. What is one genre that you never want to read again?
I just have to say, I'm not going to say that I never want to read it again, but if I had to say one, and I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, psychological thrillers were just a lot for me. I just have no emotional boundaries at all. So when that person is getting hacked up, it's me.
Yeah.
I am the one getting hacked up, and I'm looking over my shoulder for a week. I mean, I just there are things that I have read that I still will think about. And it was 10 years ago. I'm just not a person who was made for psychological thrillers. Now, thrillers are okay. There's some things I can just, it's a thriller, I can read it, but those really twisty, dark psychological ones, they're just a lot for me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. They're hard to shake,
Yeah. You're just,
What is your favorite time of day to write?
In the morning, first thing. Well, that's not really, I love to write at night, but I have to get up and be functional on the next day. So I try to first 2 hours of the morning is kind of my writing time before I check phone, email, all of that stuff. Cause after that, the day's not mine anymore. You know, it's everybody else's, and things are coming in, and I feel like I need to do this and that and get everything ready. And so this the morning time is good.
Awesome. What is your favorite time of day to read?
Nighttime.
Mhm.
Although I love to read on the beach, like during the day, that is just like, it feels like such a guilty pleasure, which is not, you know, I mean, it's a book, it's my job. I should like read during the day. I think it's Ellen Hildebrand who said that she makes reading a part of her work day. And I'm like, one day I'm going to do that. But then I'm like, how does she fit that in her work day? I can't, but I'm going to try. I'm going to work on that.
Maybe her trick is she's like, I only do like 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe. Well, that could be true too. But I mean, 20 minutes at a time gets a book read, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Todd Wakefield, in Sweet Valley.
Love it.
Remember him? No. Oh no, he was the older brother. He was their older brother. Oh, I did like him too, though. Okay, we'll go with him. Final answer.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I love it so much. What is your favorite writing fuel?
Favorite writing tool?
Sorry, fuel. Sorry, there's a little background noise.
Yeah, I was like, my favorite writing tool is like on my computer. My favorite writing fuel is, I mean, this isn't that exciting, but like I always drink smoothies in the morning when I'm writing. I'm not a coffee drinker, so that's not really, but I drink tea too.
Love it so much. I need to get a blender. You're like, you hear saying that, I'm like, all right, that's my sign for a blender.
I don't like to cook, and so the blender is like my favorite thing, and I can just like throw my stuff in there and then just like rinse it out. I don't have to clean anything really. I mean, it's a simple process. So
I love it so much. Do you have a preferred blender to recommend?
So I have a Vitamix that I'm absolutely obsessed with, and buying the first, like you would have thought that we were deciding whether to buy a Bentley or not, because I was like, I'm not going to spend this kind of money on a blender. This is absolutely ridiculous. But the kind of segue was my husband and I had some like leftover credit at Williams-Sonoma from our wedding. And so we used like a little bit of wedding credit and then like put a little bit of money with it. And then I was like, this is my favorite thing I've ever owned. And we bought another one like when we got a beach place. And so I have two of them, and I've had them both for like 15 years and they're perfect. So I will say it's like, I mean, I can burn up a blender. I had blenders before that I would burn up in like 6 or 7 months. And this one, these 14 years.
So, I love it. Sold.
Yeah. Sold. They should hire me because I talk about them a lot. I write about them a lot too. I'm like a hardcore Vitamix fan.
That is so funny. You're like, send me some Vitamixes, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Send me the new model.
Okay. So now, I mean, you may even just say Vitamix is the answer, but what is one luxury item that you can't live without?
I mean, I think it's going to be my Vitamix. Yeah, I mean, I do love shoes. I love a good pair of shoes. That's that's one of my favorite treats.
I love it. How do you celebrate a new release?
Going on tour to the brink of death. No, just
they're like, can't wait.
Definitely champagne, always champagne. But yeah, like going out and seeing my people. It's awesome. It's the best. Even if it's online, it's just so fun. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, Kristy, thank you so much. We've come to the end. Before I say goodbye and turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions off camera, well, not off camera, off a recording, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you?
My website is KristyWoodsonHarvey.com, and the best thing to do is to sign up for my newsletter, and I send it like once a week. So it's not like you're going to get 20 spammy emails a day from me. It's just like once a week. It has all of the news, everything that's going on, what's upcoming. And I'll have a lot of times people say, how do I find out about this or that? And pretty much everything is in that newsletter. So, so definitely keep up with me there. And I'm on Instagram at Kristy W. Harvey, and I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey on Facebook. And I'm Kristy W. Harvey on Twitter as well.
Awesome. All right, Kristy Woodson Harvey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to turn this over to our readers now.
Awesome.